evening, ladies and gentlemen. May I please request the panelists to kindly take seat on the dais. My Lady Justice Dangre, Dr. Ashwini Joshi, Dr. Janvi Kedare, Dr. Nandita Shah, and Ms. Tamanna Inamdar. May I also request our moderators to kindly take seat on the dais. My lady, may I begin? Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. My Lady Justice Dangre, my Lady Justice Deshpande, all the dignitaries on the dais, Mr. Nitin Thakkar, President of the Bombay Bar Association, Mr. Prashant Relekar, President of the Advocates Association of Western India, and all the lovely faces that I see this evening. Thank you so much for being here. On behalf of the Bombay Bar Association and the Advocates Association of Western India, I extend a very warm welcome to all our distinguished guests and dignitaries. I'm now onwards going to refer to the Advocates Association of Western India as AWI, as we also fondly know it, so please excuse the abbreviated term. The spirit of today reminds me of the powerful words of Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. These words capture the resilience, determination, and quiet strength that define the journeys of so many women, rising despite barriers, rising despite doubt, rising with dignity, purpose, and grace. Today is recognizing that rise. Today we honor women who have excelled in their fields. We're applauding success. We are applauding role models who inspire confidence and send a powerful message that excellence knows no gender. It is truly a privilege to be in the presence of women whose work has made a meaningful difference to institutions, communities, and society at large. With my lady's kind permission, I would now like to begin the felicitation of our distinguished women achievers. The felicitation will be carried out by Mr. Nitin Thakkar, President of the Bombay Bar Association, and Mr. Prashant Relekar, President of AWI. First and foremost, it is our proud privilege to honor my lady, Justice Bharti Dangre. Justice Dangre began her distinguished legal career in 1990 at the District Court, Nagpur, and later at the High Court. In 2000, she was appointed as the Assistant Government Pleader, followed by her appointment as Additional Government Pleader in 2007, and thereafter as Government Pleader at the Nagpur Bench in 2014. During her tenure as Government Counsel, she handled a wide spectrum of criminal and civil matters, constitutional issues, and several public interest litigations. In 2017, she was elevated as an additional judge of the Bombay High Court. Her journey stands as a beacon of inspiration for young women lawyers practicing before this court. Ladies and gentlemen, Justice Dangre. Dr. Ashwini Joshi, Additional Municipal Commissioner, Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. A distinguished officer in the Indian Administrative Service, Dr. Joshi secured an outstanding All India rank of 13 in the UPSC examination in 2006. Beginning her administrative career in Nagpur, she has since served in numerous high-impact leadership roles, including that of Collector and State Excise Commissioner. Over nearly 2 decades of exemplary service, she has made significant contributions to urban governance and public administration. She is widely respected for her integrity, discipline, and unwavering commitment to principal administration. Dr. Ashwini Joshi, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Janvi Kedare, senior psychiatrist, is highly respected with more than 3 decades of experience in mental and behavioral sciences, an associate professor at TN Medical College and a senior practitioner at BYL Nair Charitable Hospital. She has dedicated her life to healing, teaching, and advancing mental health care. Her empathetic approach and diagnostic excellence have earned her numerous recognitions, including the Savitribai Phule Gaurav Puraskar 2024 for her significant contribution to preventing workplace sexual harassment. She is admired for combining professional excellence with deep compassion. Dr. Janvi Kedare, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Nandita Shah is the co-director and managing trustee of Akshara Center, a pioneering not-for-profit organization dedicated to empowering women and girls. A doctorate in philosophy from the University of Amsterdam, she is a distinguished social worker, trainer, and public awareness campaign specialist. As an active member of the Indian women's movement, her work has consistently championed gender equity, justice, and social transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nandita Shah. Ms. Tamanna Inamdar, Managing Editor, NDTV Profit, is an accomplished journalist with over 2 decades of experience across leading media networks, including Star News, ET Now, CNBC, and Bloomberg Quint. Currently serving as a Managing Editor at NDTV Profit, she has been instrumental in shaping business journalism in India. She is widely recognized for her engaging coverage of financial markets and for hosting prominent national and international events, including sessions at the G20 Summit 2023, C11, and FICCI forums. Her leadership continues to inspire young journalists across the country. Ms. Tamanna Inamdar. I also take this opportunity of introducing one member sitting amongst us whose journey has inspired the legal fraternity. My Lady, Justice Manjusha Deshpande. A university topper in law, Justice Deshpande began her career under the mentorship of senior advocate Prabhakar Rao Deshmukh. She served in various capacities for government and semi-government organizations, and she was appointed as Assistant Government Pleader and Additional Public Prosecutor at the Aurangabad bench. She has also served on committees under the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act. She was elevated as an additional judge of the Bombay High Court on 11th August 2023. May I request Mr. Suresh Sabrad, is he here? He's not here. Ms. Gunjan Shah and Ms. Ankita Singhania to kindly do the honors and felicitate my Lady Justice Manjusha Deshpande. Can I have a big round of applause as well, please? We also have in our presence an IPS officer from Gujarat, Ms. Butara, and may I request Ms. Kainaz Irani and Ms. Kanchal Pawar to kindly do the needful and felicitate her. Thank you so much for coming. To guide us through the upcoming panel discussion, we have two accomplished members of the bar who were instrumental in conceptualizing and executing this collaborative initiative. Ms. Prachi Tatke, an advocate with over 22 years of practice at the Bombay High Court, and she appears before the Supreme Court in various tribunals. Ms. Tatke is also a visiting professor at New Law College. She was appointed as an additional government pleader in 2024 and serves as panel counsel for the Union of India, the state of Maharashtra, and the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. The idea of this joint collaboration was conceptualized by her. May I have a big round of applause for Ms. Tatke, please? We have been joined by my lady, Justice Sathe. Prior to introducing the other panelists, Ms. Fene, may I just, small interruption, but we would like to felicitate my lady as well. Justice Sathe enrolled with the Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa in 2002 after graduating from Government Law College, Mumbai. Over a distinguished career spanning more than 2 decades, she developed a formidable practice in taxation law, regularly appearing before the ITAT, CESTAT, and the Bombay High Court. Known for her professional integrity and expertise, she was elevated as an additional judge of the Bombay High Court on 19th August 2025. Her journey from leading tax practitioner to the bench is truly inspiring. May I request Ms. Gunjan Shah and Ms. Kainaz Irani to kindly do the needful and felicitate Justice Sathe. And last but not the least, our second moderator for this evening's very exciting session is Ms. Sneha Fene. Ms. Fene is a seasoned counsel and a qualified solicitor with nearly 2 decades of experience, a standing committee member of the Bombay Bar Association. She's also a certified advocacy trainer with the International Advocacy Training Council. She has played a pivotal role in bringing this collaboration to life and ensuring its successful execution. May I have a big round of applause for her as well. And now, how much ever I have enjoyed doing this, I must take your leave. Thank you all for being so wonderful. May I now invite the moderators to kindly take over this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahek. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. Sneha just asked me casually, Prachi, why can we do something together? And it was an instant yes. We didn't think of what we could do, but it was an instant yes. And then immediately we came up with this idea, why not bar members and women members of 2 bars come together? So I welcome all of you, my honorable judges, presidents of both the bar associations, Shri Relekar sir and Nitin Bhai Thakkar. I welcome all my panelists here and all my senior advocates, friends and colleagues. It was more of a thing that, pressure cooker ki seeti bajti hai kyunki valve intact hai. So all of us have this valve inside, and the best way we get it out is through chit-chatting, gappa goshti, or maybe just ya mani se tya mani. So we just thought, why not have a felicitation and get that inspiration from all of these judges and our panelists. I'd like to share before we start, we have amongst us IPS officer from Gujarat, Madam Buttada, and also I recently see that we are joined by Srimati Urmila Apte, the founder of Stree Shakti Kendra, and she was felicitated by the Rashtrapati Award. So there was another Colonel Shikha Yadav. So we got a very good response. Many people said we wanted to come, but I firstly have to appreciate what Justice Dangre did for us. She not only has taken out time, but she's given us so much encouragement. Every time we would go to the chambers and we would say, oh my God, how does she manage? Look at her board. Her working hours are so crazy. And here we are, he karuka, te noko ka, and all of that. So I really, really appreciate, Madam. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us so much of an encouragement. I will start this session, Gappa Goshti, and I'm going to keep it very light. Although sometimes we become very sensitive when we talk about feminism or women's rights, or maybe extremist to that extent when you talk about this. So I'm just going to keep it light. Let's share our thoughts about it. And Madam, I'll start with you, Dagni Madam. And I would want to know, and everybody, how did you, it's been a 3 decades of practice and now about a decade of being a judge on this bench. How did you start? What was your inspiration to become a lawyer? And how did you go about it?
First of all, I must congratulate the Advocates Association, AVI, and the Bombay Bar Association for organizing such a beautiful conceptual evening where we decided that we will not lecture someone, but we will really interact. In the sense, of course, there are some questions which may be uncomfortable for us to answer, but we thought that we will have a what you can say, really an interaction, an interactive session, in the sense that we are all from different fields, and we are largely, the audience here is either the lawyers or counsels on some this thing, or from some corporate firms. But we thought that this is not the only field where women have excelled. But we are proud to know that we have a municipal commissioner, we have a doctor, we have a journalist, and all the field women have excelled, and we are proud of this. So what we thought was that let's have a different perspective about life from all those experts in the field, because we all know as lawyers, nothing unusual, because lawyers turned into judges. So from hearing, taking my perspective is only one-sided, in the sense that we all know what have been doing as lawyers, attending the office from 10 to 5 or probably late nights. As a judge also we do the same thing. But we have personalities from different walks of life who have been rather confronted with so many issues, so many practical difficulties. And that's why we thought that we should have an interactive session, or rather a question and answer session, so that as a woman, on the special Women's Day, we get different perspectives. Speaking for myself, actually, it's not right to say that I have completed a decade of judgeship. It's just some 8.5 years, some period short for a decade. But of course, I had a practice. I started my practicing in 1991. And it's not that I was destined to be a lawyer, but I wanted to join medicine first. But some reason I did not get in medicine. So I joined occupational therapy to realize that that's not my cup of tea. After attending the college for 1 month, I still remember when my father told me that there's a law college and a 5-year course have started last year. I did not speak to my father for 8 days, thinking that you think I'm such a duffer that I'll join law. Because at the relevant time when I joined in the year 1986, law was the last choice. Of course, now this law is the first choice, and I'm proud that it is a first choice even amongst girls. It's not, a question which normally is asked is, what difference do you feel when you are competing against either male lawyers in a man's world, or when you are acting as a judge amongst the judges who are largely male? In my view, there's no difference, for the simple reason that law applies equally to everyone. When we are learning law in law colleges, I don't think that as there's any distinction how we read law or how we are taught law. The law which we have learned, the law which we are going to implement is the same. You practice the same law, and telling you very frankly, I have an experience of working as a lawyer, and largely most of my part was as a public prosecutor. I realize, and even now as a judge, I realize that when you argue a case before a court, or when you take up a brief from a client, it hardly makes any difference whether your gender is not at all important. It's how you give relief to your client, how you argue his case, and when you appear before a court of law also, it hardly makes any difference whether what is your gender, nor does it make a difference as to who is sitting in the chair. And most of the lawyers will agree that it doesn't make any difference whether the judge is a lady judge or a male judge. The conspectus of law doesn't change because of your gender. It remains the same. But rather, it's very encouraging to see, because now we are not going to talk here about empowerment and emancipation. because I think last 2 decades or more than that, we are all feel emancipated. The only thing is this, how we take it ahead, how we move ahead. Because though we find that there are so many lady lawyers, now of course it's very encouraging to see young girls joining the profession, arguing efficiently, putting up their case, struggling as hard as male lawyers with no distinction that she is a female. It doesn't make any difference. No more we identify an advocate as a male advocate or a female advocate. So is the case of a judge. So in my view, it's for as far as the legal profession is concerned, it may be I don't want to talk about all those hard struggles, because there were times when this profession was completely male dominated and it was very difficult. And Madam is here, so all those seniors will agree that what difficult those days were. Not in the sense that the cooperation which we got from our colleagues or in the judiciary, but the trust which the client reposed in a female lawyer. But now even that scenario has changed. And rather, I must say that now you'll find that some type of litigation, some type of clients rather are interested or rather are inclined to have more focus or trust in a lady lawyer. And that's a welcome stage. So I do not think that there is any discrimination in our career, which I have witnessed being as a lawyer or as a judge, that we make any demarcation between a male and female lawyer or male and female judge.
But madam, I would like to ask if a woman's perspective on the bench, does that change at times if you're sharing a bench?
As I have said, that it is not that a perspective, it's a perspective of a judge. Justice is not gender-based. Because if I am sitting as a woman judge, it's not that I will do justice in a different way. It's the same way because I am there in the chair as a judge, irrespective of my gender. And similarly, when some matter is argued before me, it doesn't depend upon whether it's male lawyer, female lawyer, or even whether the client is male or female.
Thank you, madam. That makes it very strong that justice is justice. It is not biased, and certainly perspectives are individual perspectives, and we cannot...
I can only add that the goddesses of justice is a female. Just keep that in mind.
That is the ultimate.
So you can get the perspective.
Salute. My next question would be to Dr. Joshi. We have 3 doctors here today, all from 3 different various fields. My next question would be to Dr. Joshi. You've had such a different, diverse role in the state of Maharashtra, because you were at Bhandara, you were at Thane Municipal Council, you were in the Mumbai city, again there were so many posts that we read that you've taken in the last 10 years and 15 years. But as I read through her journey, she was definitely not an uptown girl, a girl coming from Chiprun. Taking up, just like Madam said, her first choice was probably not UPSC. She has a degree in dental, she got admitted here in the dental college in Mumbai, but her first preference was not medicine in terms of dental college. Ma'am, how was your journey coming from Chiprun to Mumbai, and how would you say that the girls coming from different areas of Maharashtra, what is it that they must seek here in Mumbai?
Thank you very much for inviting me here and allowing me to share my thoughts. I come from a small subdivisional town of Chiprun, and I educated till my 12th and up to 10th in Marathi medium. I come from a doctor's family which has 33 doctors. So after I missed my admission in MBBS, I landed in dentistry. And in my first year itself, I realized that this is not for me. But then I thought, okay, any graduation, let me do it. But when I came to internship, I told my parents, now I want to shift and I want to opt for another field. Initially, there was a lot of opposition, but then somehow parents agreed. And then I started studying for UPSC during my internship itself. I took very different subjects, sociology and Marathi literature for my UPSC, because throughout I was in a science background. In UPSC, I had to do a lot of struggle because I got into UPSC in my 3rd attempt. But in 3rd attempt, I was All India 13 and topper of Maharashtra. So that is how I came in the service. when you are a topper of a state coming into the home cadre, that you are in the skies. But suddenly the reality of the service takes your toll. It starts taking your toll. So what all experience you are saying are the 14 postings in 18 years. So my luggage became very hard and toughened. My sofas and dining table, they are used to getting packed and unpacked at various intervals of time, just on a lighter note. I served into tribal department first because we were denied SDO-ship by then Chief Minister of Maharashtra for whatever reasons. The entire batch was denied the SDO-ship. So the first shock came there because you are unacceptable to anybody as a direct IAS officer. And then secondly, you are unacceptable in many districts because you are a lady IAS officer. I don't think of myself as a lady IAS officer, but still, when you are posted, it is always a preference. I mean, you have to accept it. It's a hard fact. But that continued till 2011. After 2011, I came as controller rationing in Mumbai and I had a tenure of 3 years. And in that, I got seasoned in Mumbai. I got to know many cases. I used to come frequently to High Court because for various seizures, various actions, because in those 3 years, my seizures were something 750 crore, which was larger than any commissionerate at that point of time. That is why a lot of cases I faced. Initially, I had hard times, but then I thought I should keep my ego away. I started myself going to brief the senior counsels. I started myself looking at the affidavits properly, and then it was a smoother journey. The real acclamation came when I became Collector Thane. The way I took on Reti Mafia or whatever land mafia in that region. After that, I was posted in Mumbai. And then I think people came to understand that it is not a lady or a man IAS officer. This officer is an officer and it's a no-nonsense officer. So whenever you have to take decision, you have to take decision and you have to pay the price of that. So there is no second thought about it. That is what I feel.
Truly inspiring. From what I gathered, it's nothing about a woman's perspective or nothing about being emotional about being a woman. Your job is your job and we do it equally well. This is the message I think both of them are giving. But there is this mental dilemma. Sometimes you're very sensitive. And Dr. Kedare, Janhavi Kedare, I have to tell you all that she has over 50 papers published on mental health. Her accolades are amazing. She's a gold medalist. And there is one of the papers that I read is about the rural and the urban mentality or the mindset of women is different. And you've written a research paper on that. So it was quite interesting. We say women are women. Be it rural or urban, why should it change? But I'd like to know from you, what is the difference between the urban sector and the rural sector? And women's mental health, does it change? Has there been a change? You've been in practice for over 30 years. Psychiatry is definitely not an easy job. So, but obviously, if there are any changes that you have yourself seen in the last 30 years, we'd like to know more from you.
Thank you. It is good to come here. Oh, I'm very sorry for this.
The reference I got to know that आपल्याकडे 36 मध्ये एक मोठा बाळासाहेब आपटेंचा फोटो आहे. पण मॅडमचा रेफरन्स किंवा जानवी मॅडमचा रेफरन्स आणि त्यांच्याशी नातं काय आहे? I came to know only when she stepped in 36. So I mean, I am also touched with the feeling that, we welcome you here as a part of us. And it's really an honor to have you here.
I'm sorry for being emotional like this. I thought I would be able to control this. This is not the first time that I have stepped in High Court, and I really thank Avi and BBA for giving this opportunity to me. There is a legacy of my father Advocate Balapte, who practiced here for about 35 to 40 years, and so did my uncle, Advocate Shrikant Dharam. I think after about 20 to 25 years, I must have stepped into the High Court, and looking at the portrait of my father in room number 36, the bar room where he used to sit initially with Advocate K.J. Abhyankar, and then he himself with Advocate Shrikant Dharam and Apte Chamber, as it was called in those days. There, when I looked at his portrait, I think a lot of memories for me to be in the High Court. And coming back to mental health. Has there been any change in what we have been seeing in our practice over a period of time? Yes, of course, there has been a change. Is there any difference between urban and rural women? Yes, there is some amount of difference in urban and rural women. Some of it because of the nature of the socio-cultural environment in which they live. In urban area, obviously the exposure to various things is very quick and very early. The kind of education, the kind of exposure to social media, especially in today's world, the kind of opportunities that an urban woman or a girl gets, and the kind of employment rates that women have in an urban area, I think all this has an impact on the way the society looks at women, especially in urban area. In rural area, whether that has changed or not, yes, to a certain extent, definitely it has changed. Has the woman in the rural area become educated? She has started getting educated. I would not say that everybody is uneducated in whether they are working or not, they were always working. In the fields and farms, women were always working and they are still working, but then they are definitely, I should say, empowered in certain ways, especially because of some financial capacities that they are getting. The kind of education that our women are getting is definitely changing their outlook towards the world. Whenever we talk of especially urban women, which we tend to see more often here in Mumbai in our practice, is whether there is a conflict between a work and family environment or work and family conflict, if it exists. Now, there are various studies. Research has shown that yes, probably, is there any stress in a woman's life? In urban society, yes, of course, there is a stress in woman's life. And why is it there? It's because of various factors. One of the factors being, of course, the career is very demanding. It could be working hours. I know lawyers, after going home also, they have to read their matters, they have to meet their clients, there are meetings, etc., etc. And the work doesn't get over between 10 to 5. It continues much beyond that. And so is true for various fields in which women work today. And therefore, this stress remains. Also, one has to prove oneself when she is a woman at the place of work. All said and done, that inability of a man to accept a woman as a boss is seen even now in certain fields, especially in the corporate sector. Though yes, whether it is improving or not, yes, it is improving, but there is a struggle. And therefore, then the multiple roles, the multiple roles that a woman has to play in the day, it begins with maybe getting up, cooking, sending children to school, preparing a tiffin, coming on time to the place of work, going back, again planning for your dinner, for your breakfast, for your lunch, and still attending meetings, attending calls, simultaneously managing your children, etc., etc. Not only that, keeping family relationships is something woman of the family does. Rather than the man, keeping family relationships intact and bonding everybody together is the job of a woman even now in today's world. From that point of view, it has changed because we see this struggle that the woman does. But when we look at research, we realize that whether a professional is more happy, yes, a professional woman or a working woman is definitely more happy than a woman who's unable to work. One of the most important reasons is that the self-respect that the woman gets through her work and through her profession becomes very important. Also, to a certain extent, the idea that she herself is earning. I will not say that there is financial independence in every family, but the idea that she herself is earning and that she is capable of making decisions by herself is something that gives her courage and that gives her confidence and that improves her self-esteem. From that point of view, definitely the scenario has changed, and that is one of the reasons why it just doesn't remain work-family conflict, but there is some positive aspect to the working woman also. Has the outlook of the society changed towards the woman? To a certain extent, it has changed, but I would say still, as I said, the planning of the day, execution of the day, contributing in the family is much more a woman's responsibility than a man's responsibility. I know there are many young lawyers, lady lawyers sitting here, and I'm sure now in this generation, men have also started taking some responsibility at home. I would not say equal, but yes, some responsibility at home, and that obviously shows that there is some change coming about. Apart from the, let's say, the stresses and strains of day-to-day life and daily hassles of working life, there is also an issue of safety that bothers a woman wherever she goes. Whether it is her transport, whether it is her workplace, whether it is her own community where she is living, sometimes even her own family, and all that is still more or less the same. The safety issues of women do remain. So there are socio-cultural changes taking place. The woman is very conscious about her body weight, body image, how she is looking, whether she is beautiful or not, and that sometimes makes her preoccupied. Sometimes the woman is health conscious also and is into gymming and doing Zumba and maybe trying to play a game and looking after health, looking after her diet. So she is trying to balance on various fronts like this. But still, towards her mental health, the society's attitude remains more or less the same. When a woman says that I don't feel like doing anything because I am depressed, it is not something that the family or the society or the boss is going to listen to. It's not that she will easily get to stay at home because she is feeling unwell mentally. Her anxieties, when they are increasing, she may or may not have anybody to support her in that situation. Though family is a strength for us, even in today's world, still when it comes to an outlook towards the woman's mental health, it may not be that it is easily acceptable to people in the family or in the community. If it is, let's say, giddiness, high BP, blood sugar, any such thing, or a fall and a fracture, probably she will be taken to a doctor immediately because she needs to be fit to look after people at home. But for her depression, for her anxiety, for whatever emotional upheavals that she is experiencing, whether she herself will seek help, that's a big question. And whether the family will also seek help on her behalf and take her to a psychiatrist or to a mental health professional, it doesn't happen that easily. And therefore, outlook towards the mental health of women has changed to a certain extent, but still there is lots to be done in that field, and that aspect has not really changed. So whether we have seen a change and shift, yes, of course. Women themselves, especially the younger generation, is aware of the mental health needs. And the younger generation comes forward and come to us for help, seeking help, saying that probably I need help. But otherwise, generally women who are working, whether they will be brought to a mental health professional, there is no guarantee.
I gather a few things here that firstly, even in spite of the anxiety or the stress, what is important for a woman is to be independent and do what she wants to do. I think that is what we were fighting for. And the second part is that the men need to be more sensitive to take into consideration all the mental issues that a woman go through. Could be hormonal or anything, but that is the main issue, that we need to be understood. I think that is the bottom line. Incidentally,
I
today,
will just add one thing,
Certainly.
and that is what change we have been observing is definitely, see, the life cycle of a woman is around hormonal changes. It begins with menarche, there is childbirth, there is menopause. And in all this also, there are a lot of hormonal changes in the modern world, which we have observed in the past many years, where the age of menarche is very early. Even at the age of 9 and 10, girls start getting menstrual period. Perinatal period, that is antenatal and perinatal period, around the pregnancy, again there are issues. There is late age of marriage, there is late age of pregnancy, there are many more complications coming up with it, including a lot of anxieties regarding pregnancy. There are increasing rates of infertility which lead to an increase in anxiety, depression, and a whole lot of mental disorders that the woman can suffer from. And then yes, of course, the menopausal age group where there is emotional upheaval, definitely.
so incidentally, today is the 129th death anniversary of Savitribai Phule. So I'm just trying to imagine what kind of a vision and thinking that she must have had back then to look at women's independence, fight for women's education, and her, I will not say civil liberties at that point in time, it must have been only her right to live and respect. So Dr. Shah, I will like to ask you, how did your movement start? And you have a PhD in social sciences from the University of Amsterdam. How did you, being a Mumbai girl, how did it all start for you?
First of all, thank you for inviting me here. And I think that the whole idea that a lot of things have changed today, we say that Savitribai, like, in the women's movement, we sing that Savitribai started that first round that we are all here to whatever education we have taken. And it has been many movements that have led women to be where we are. Like, we didn't have to fight for the voting rights. Our constitution gave us that. But that doesn't mean that everything was given to us. It came on platter just because constitution gave us. So when I began, women were not treated equally in many ways. So we began with Mathura rape case. And many of you might know or not know, but she was a 16-year-old tribal girl who was raped in a police station. And when her case, Supreme Court gave acquittal to the two policemen raping her, saying that she must have agreed. And the whole idea of consent, and what does consent mean? What does rape mean? What is full penetration? All these questions were being raised at that time in the women's movement. And today what we see, the changes that have happened in rape law, during the Mathura rape case debate and after within the Nirbhaya rape case, that we see a lot of change even in the legal framework on how we understand rape, how do we understand custodial rape, who has a right to prove, and the whole notion of consent. And I think these are the debates that we raised at that time. The issue was always seen as rape is a social issue. And violence, domestic violence are all problems, social issue, theek ho jayega. What we were saying is that we have to make it into a political issue. And unless we bring the power that exists in our society, we will never be able to change it. And that is the difference that I think all of us as part of the women's movement try to raise the issue, that we are not against men. We are against the patriarchal society which allows men a certain level of privilege in society. It allows the fact that you're born in a family, it's seen as it's your right. Always a girl is told कि तू तुरे ससुराल जाएगी तब तेरा घर हो जाएगा. But in ससुराल you always told that ये तेरा घर थोड़ी है. You know, so this whole notion that you are actually never really given a right is something that we had to raise and question, and even that is valid today. A lot of things have changed, and you know, one of the question when I was looking at it, that just in my 30 years journey, I see a huge difference in the women's ability to assert themselves, the way we treat our daughters, also the way we treat our boys. And I think we would like more change in the way we treat our boys, but still, many times, even in our family, when we discuss or daughters think, ऐसा कुछ करना कि फिर family भी manage हो जाएगा. You know, so that is your first goal, that, you know, you're told, even if you're earning, even though you are there, even the workforce looks at you as secondary. And my PhD was on that you're always contingent. You're contingent to the family and you're contingent to the workplace. So anytime you can be asked to leave the job, and anytime the employer has to remove anybody, women will be the first one to be fired. So these are changes that we have to work towards, and I think that a conversation like this between the different group of people today, I think it's an important conversation that all of us need to do. And I don't think it's only about women having this conversation, but as a society, as men and women, and for us and the organization I'm working, issues of safety. Why is it that safety is only a women's concern? You know, we work with young women, and the young women, if they tell at home, कि किसने मुझे छेड़ा, तो the only thing that's going to happen is she will be stopped from going out. Parents will say कि तू जा ही मत ना, वो रास्ते पे नहीं जाना, वो बाजार में मत जाना, college में नहीं जाना, because you are being harassed. But nobody is questioning why society is behaving like this and what can we do about it. Am I telling, like, lot of time we say that if after 7 o'clock all boys were told to be at home, we'll all be bindas on the street. We will have no problem on the street. But nobody says that to anybody. You don't tell your son that, the society doesn't tell anybody. So when we talk about safety, the only thing we are saying, acha, more surveillance, CCTV camera laga do, have more police. But what are we doing as a society for the kind of space that we want to create for women and men to operate together? And that is what we are questioning. So all our work is around, what do we do as bystanders? What do we do the fact that we are around when something is happening? When a sexist joke is cracked, all men are there. They may not take a stand. Not all of them are participating, but they're not doing anything to stop it. And a lot of times, even women are part of those conversations because we feel we want to belong to that whole thing. We want to be part of what's happening, So you say, itna joke hi hai, but that joke does something to us. So we are saying even Bollywood is reinforcing these kinds of things. And how do we question Bollywood on the kind of sexism? I mean, every song is becoming worse and worse in terms of lyrics that are coming out. So how do we challenge those notions? And, we have lot of gains, but we have a long way to go. And how do we work together on that process is something that I feel all of us, like as activists, as people who have been part of this not-for-profit organization, we are trying to say, so one is, what's the mindset change that we need to do? Second is, what's the legal framework that we need to question and say, how do we, it was such a long time that only penetration was seen as rape. We had to challenge that penetration is not the only form of rape. So how do we challenge all these aspects? Even POCSO kind of legislation has come because the women's movement and Bhauri Devi case happened. But is POCSO really being implemented in its spirit? Everybody just has their ICC committee and, have an outsider. But where is the spirit of that POCSO implementation? Because the idea is that we want to create POSH. So, POSH. So in terms of the law, how do we really bring that spirit into the system? So that is where all of us are trying to build our efforts and different aspects of it. And I'll
One
continue.
part in Posh is where a complaint made by a woman, which is a false complaint, is also worthy of penalty. So I would like to ask you, Tamanda, we come from a background that, we are all here working shoulder to shoulder with men lawyers. You are more of a liberated media and journalism sector, and I see such a big woman force, be it not just the journalism, but also the business, the markets, that all of you take it forward. Two things that I'd like to continue from what Dr. Shah said. Is this really important that, I belong to that class, and when the boys are there, we are just equals? How does it happen in the corporate world? Or the second thing would be, what is the journey of all the women with journalism and media?
Thank you so much. Truly, I'm sitting on this panel with a justice and 3 doctors. I'm feeling truly proud to be here, overwhelmed almost to be invited into the Bombay High Court and into this world. Our interaction with lawyers is sometimes as a source of news, many times as a way of understanding what's happening in the world. And I would say I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. When we talk about what our mothers and grandmothers went through, for me to sit here and feel as confident as I do and as in control as I do of my destiny is because so many before me have faced a situation which they fought against. So I'm very, very aware of how privileged I am to be in this time and place right now. Having said that, it's a little more complicated than it seems in the newsroom. When I started my journey in 2001, there was one English private channel, one Hindi private channel. And I've been lucky to see that explosion, lucky or unlucky you would say. Today there's 250 channels and people don't really like it. But to see that journey of where journalism has gone. But let me put it this way, when I first entered the newsroom, the encouragement was, okay, you're a girl, you look okay, why don't you go cover entertainment? You'd be a fit choice to cover, Bollywood. That was the
That's exactly
era
why I asked, why the business?
of Page 3. And I found through my career, have a slightly louder voice to prove that what is between my ears and my mind is a very, very useful tool. Having said that, I think I've been lucky, I've been privileged because I've had mentors who saw my capability and allowed me to come into this space. But it's been a fight. I'll give you an example. When there is a war to cover, believe you me, the female journalist hands go up. We fight. And I have been in situations where I remember when there was an opportunity to cover something. I think it was the Tahrir Square, riots, and someone wanted to go to Egypt, and who will get to go? And it was a fight between me, another female colleague, and 2 male journalists. My editor very smartly said, "Why don't all of you go get visas? Why don't all of you go get visas?" But eventually it was the boys who were sent because, you have to be safer. Having said that, there have been female journalists. I mean, everyone knows how, Barkha is reported. So which is why I've said I stand on the shoulder of giants. I would say in terms of equality, yes, we have made it there. There's just a little bit more that you do still need to do to display your caliber. And that happens. I can walk into a room very often with a colleague who's junior than me, but if it's a man with gray hair, he's automatically sir. And I will be asked to, okay, someone taking notes in this meeting. So that still happens. And I think things have changed, honestly, no doubt that they have. But even now, you have to subtly make your presence felt without being too aggressive at the same time, because then that is also something that people don't like. It's a tight walk, but the fact that we have gotten here and there's so many waiting in the wings with the kind of determination and need to prove yourself that others can't really match up to. I think the future is very, very female in so many sectors. And of course, these are just the torchbearers sitting here.
Sneha, would you like to take on further?
Good evening. Moving on to the next section of our discussion. I would like to discuss the success versus likability debate. So all of you are women achievers and all of you have seen a fair bit of success in your careers. Now I'd like to explore how each of you has navigated the balance between being successful and being likable. Now social research shows that the qualities which are required for success are something like being decisive, being very strong, being firm. And on the other hand, the qualities which are generally expected of women are qualities like being warm, friendly, nurturing. So therefore, ladies sometimes, or women sometimes face a backlash from society for the very qualities which make them successful. So Dr. Kedare, would you be able to give us some insight into this, it being associated with the field of psychology and maybe also psychiatry?
Okay. So, well, is it really necessary that one is not likable and still successful? Or is it possible to be likable and still be successful? I think it is that question. Yeah, in a way, dilemma in a woman's mind, I guess, whether I should remain likable or I should go after success.
Right.
Well, I look at it like this, that being warm, being kind are very good positive qualities that a woman has. And if you're successful, does not mean that you should not have those qualities. Let us say those qualities in a way help you climb the ladder of success. That warmth within you and the kindness that you have automatically gives you the capacity to interact with people in a positive manner, and your interpersonal relations with your colleagues can be much better if you have such qualities within you. When she is fighting for success, obviously a woman has to make decisions, sometimes tough decisions, sometimes she has to disagree, sometimes she has to argue, and all these things. Does she have to be aggressive? Does she have to fight? Does she have to dominate? Or it can happen by being assertive, by being firm. And whether one can learn to be firm but kind, assertive and not aggressive, I think that balance will give you the answer whether likability and success is a paradox or this is something that goes hand in hand. Right. And I think I have seen people, very good women leaders who have these qualities and who have managed their departments, their institutes, their industries very well using these qualities, and then they are likable also. At the same time, they are successful too.
Right. So therefore, aggressiveness is not necessarily required to be successful.
Yeah.
That's what you're
So where is the limit, or what is the demarcation between that assertion and the aggression? Whether you can say what you want firmly, with conviction, and yes, of course, whether there is information and knowledge as the base for that, and whether you want to hurt somebody, whether you want to use some strong and harsh words to get across your point. I think it ultimately boils down to that.
Right. Thank you. Justice Dangre, do you believe that women judges face different expectations in terms of tone or firmness compared to male colleagues?
Now, if you have to test me on the concept of or the parameters of likability, then I can see all those smirks on those faces as to what my likability is. I can immediately gauge it. But this doesn't mean that, I mean, see, if you have to, a woman has to be firm, she has to be firm. There's no other option. And it's not the question of her likability to be tested on those parameters. Because firmness necessarily doesn't mean that she is rude. And every woman carries her own charishma. She is a person by herself, irrespective, as I have said, of the gender. And as if a male lawyer can argue in a screeching voice, why can't a female lawyer do that? To bring her point, to drive her the point to a judge. But of course, you can pardon me that I'm not that type of judge who is very harsh with male or female. But see, if firmness is required as a quality for a woman should never hesitate. See, we should be very proud of a peculiar quality which we have and which probably a male would lack. That is a tender mind. And when we talk of this, we should be rather proud of this quality. I mean, when we talk of, we are speaking about women have to struggle, work-life balance, all right, but see the competency of a woman, that she's capable of doing both this. I mean, irrespective of the fact, wherever you stand, whatever position you hold, when it comes to your child and you realize that my child is ill, the mother is the one who will say that I'll sacrifice it at home or I'll make some adjustment. A father may also do that, but mother will be more than willing to do that. And that's not because she's duty bound to do so, but it is her inner instinct which makes her do that. So at some times you will feel that the quality of a woman being soft, being warm, being spreading affection around, that really helps. It may win many minds. Of course, we are not bothered about likability, but when the time comes and when an occasion comes for a woman to rise, then we all know what a woman can show. She can be, as in our Hindu mythology, we say that she can be Kali. So these are different, and this is not, take it that these are real, what you can say, avatars of every woman which she is capable of. She is gender, she is tender, she can be loving and affectionate. But when she wants to assert something, now time has come that woman must be capable of asserting. And that is what we have gained when Tamanna has said that we have traveled from here to here. This is the change. We are capable of saying yes or no in a very firm way without requiring to explain why yes, why no. That's it. And most of us, we realize that when we say no or when we say yes, our family members don't have any other option than to accept it. That's how we have progressed, because now our families have realized that the woman in our family also has a voice which requires consideration. And we are proud that we have reached at a stage where our voice matters for the family.
So what I can get from this is that the qualities which a woman has naturally are those which can be employed to be successful. So it's not necessary that the qualities of aggressiveness or the qualities of being very firm are the only qualities which are required for success. Right. Thank you, Justice Dangre. Dr. Joshi, my next question would be to you. In the field of public administration, have you ever felt the pressure to temper decisiveness with softness to be accepted? Like you said that, you know, there were so many seizures that you did, etc. So did you feel that the decisiveness that is required for you to be able to perform those functions, you were also required at times to be a little soft to be acceptable?
I feel that decisiveness has to be reflected in the decision and not in the day-to-day working. Like, people may perceive me as a tough officer, but if you ask the people who are sitting outside, like my personal staff or officers who are working under me, they will be very happy people. Like, in matters of giving leave to them, in doing their kids' admissions, in sending them here and there for any training or any exposure. Like, I'll be dil khulas, kuthhe jayachai tithe ja. Like, my honesty, I'm not wearing it on my sleeves. My toughness, I'm not wearing on my sleeves. I will give example of Thane Collectorate. Like Thane workload was so much. My elder son was just 10 months old when I got posted as Thane Collector. So I had to sit in office till 8. There were 8 to 10 people who had to sit in office till 8. So we used to order khidki vada. Then in enjoyable atmosphere you work. When I'm writing on a file, I have to be firm. I'm dealing with so many people who want to deviate from the rules. So I am tough to them, but I don't have to say it. Whatever I have to say, even if I have to take any action on anybody, I'll write it on paper. I'll not say it to that person, because there is always a mental break in accepting a lady boss initially, because the ego doesn't allow very easily. Our society's makeup is such that, especially in revenue department, I would say that it's still a male-dominated department. Now, a lot of girls have come up as deputy collectors and they have equated that field. But still, the acceptance is low initially. But when they know that you are considerate towards their small requirements, then you can be tough while taking decisions. But you don't have to show it. In initial career, I tried to show aggressiveness, but later I realized that I have to show my firmness on paper instead of showing aggressiveness in my behavior.
Yes, thank you. That's a very interesting perspective. Thank you. Dr. Shah, in activism, have you found that being outspoken sometimes clashes with societal expectations of women?
I think nobody expected us to be protesting outside the High Court when we started during the Mathura. That was the first time I came outside the High Court. So yes, society doesn't expect us to take firm stands in most of the situation, be out there. Also, I come from a very business family. Nobody in my family has done social work. And so for them also it was a very big shift. But I think like what everybody said, without aggression also you can communicate your firmness and be very available for everybody. And I think that kind of balance and relationship is not been difficult to manage to do in society. But like what you say, you have to be outspoken because that's the only way change will happen. If all of us had not taken stand and protested, lot of things couldn't have been changed. And it's that kind of assertion that you have to have and put your foot down that this has to change. Like, for example, when 2 women were molested outside JW Marriott in 2007 on 31st December night, all of us went to the Mumbai police and we said, we know that you will arrest those people. But what is your long-term plan of how are you going to relate to and respond to any crisis that women are facing in our city? And that's how 103 police helpline started. And it started in 2007 and it's still going on. And so many women call for domestic violence, but also for street sexual harassment. So this kind of stand and assertion you have to do. When we worked on the 1994 Maharashtra Women's Policy, you know, that time the fashion was that everybody was doing all women's police station. Chennai had, Delhi had. So you have one police station which is run by all women and all women's cases would go there. And in Maharashtra, we all took a stand that we don't want that. We want a desk, a women's desk in every police station, which should service women in crisis, and every position in the police should have women. And otherwise, women were there only to catch protesters and some very, very minor roles they were given. And it is that you see today after 30 years, that such a huge change in Maharashtra's entire police force has happened. So I think that kind of stand at that time was required. It was opposed in many ways by people. But when state approves for something like that, it has such a huge potential for change. So I think that kind of outspokenness is something that comes as part of our work to see what kind of change we can bring.
Thank you. And Ms. Inamdar, In journalism, have you ever felt the pressure to adjust your communication style to balance credibility with likability?
You know, may I just say that the framing of the question is so female. I don't know a single man who would ask themselves, should I be successful or
Should I be
likable?
likable? Yes.
Just the thought process is so female.
Yes.
I mean, most people would say if I'm successful enough, people better like me.
Right.
So just starting from there, we start with this disadvantage that people should like me, and my success will be more acceptable if I'm also likable. My question is why? It's okay if you are not even competing, if you're just asserting your right to exist and do your best like every other human being, then yes, of course, not to say don't be kind, because you want to be a good human being at the end of the day. Kindness, empathy, thinking about your fellow human beings is something we should all do. But we have to, I think, somewhere put our foot down that because you're a woman boss, you're not anyone's mummy. Because that tends to happen. I mean, I have a shorter experience of leading teams, but it's expected that you will understand more if there is an XYZ problem. I have the same empathy my male colleagues have. So I would say that yes, you are nice because you want to be nice, and that's who you are as a person. But I don't see any reason to change my nature, distort my nature to be more acceptable. That's a battle I feel every human being, and especially women, need to fight and win with yourself at a very early stage of your life. You have to decide whether you're going to go through this world being true to yourself or trying to conform to what other people want of you.
Right. Thank you.
I think this was more than enough for us to understand that there are conflicts between ourselves. There are conflicts where you being authoritative or being firm is not liked, because then you're dominating and you're aggressive, but it doesn't matter. You hold your ground and you're doing what you're doing. So that's absolutely okay. Likable or not, like you said, and I really appreciate that it is their perspective. They're entitled to their perspective. But whether I fit into that perspective or not is completely my decision. I am not going, just because you think I am such and such, it is not so. I think we've had a wonderful discussion, madam. Last question that I would want to, and just a little bit. Many times we see that in spite of merit, a girl is not chosen over a boy. And only because she's a girl, she's not chosen. Are we able to change it even after so many decades? Will we be able to change that?
I do not think that it happens only because she is a woman. See, yesterday only we had a conference in the Supreme Court about Lady Lawyers Conference on 8th March. Now, a lot was spoken about why more, speaking for our field, why more lady judges are not appointed in judiciary. It's a moot question. It's not that all lawyers who are elevated really deserve the coveted post. Same maybe, I am very blunt. Same may be the case that for female also you'll have to make some concession. But ultimately what has to be seen is the merit. We may talk that we want more female lawyers, but telling you very frankly, as long as when we are talking about making it as per merit, now we have sufficient number, though we can't say it's sufficient as compared to the number of the males. But we will have to work a little more for the simple reason that if we have to, because see, one thing we have to keep in mind, we are competing with male at least for another 25 years, we are required to do that. A time will come probably after 25 years when probably women will be at the top and the they would be dominating the profession. But for 25 years, We really have to create such lawyers, such ladies, that there is no option than to choose them over male. I think this is the only solution which we have to do. I'm sorry to say, since there are many young girls here, I know that they put their lot of efforts. But sometimes when it comes and when a lady lawyer comes and asks for time, I feel really pained in my heart that why did you not work? Yesterday in the evening, what did you do? You went out, you did this, you did that. Instead of this, your male colleague, what did he do? He was sitting in the chamber and reading the brief. So that's why I don't for a moment underestimate the potential of a woman. But I only want that we'll have to overexert our potential to gain that level. And I tell you, take a word from me, that another 2 decades, you will see women all over. But this gap which we have to cover, definitely we can't say that we have come on par. And this question at this stage, why males are chosen over female, we should try to find an answer for ourselves.
Thank you.
That gives me a clear idea, and I remember one dialogue from the movie Three Idiots. Layak bano. Beep, beep, beep. So I said, definitely this is for all of us. Of course, there are problems that women face, but for that we have Dr. Shah. Our mental traumas and our anxieties can be dealt with somebody like Dr. Jahnavi. To make our good representation good, we have Tamanna here. And of course, to take care of all other executive needs, we have Madam. So I think only one thing that we need to focus on is work hard and prove yourself. Thank you all for joining here. I would ask Gunjan to take over for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Prachi. On behalf of Advocates Association of Western India and Bombay Bar Association, it's my privilege to propose this vote of thanks on this special Women's occasion. At the outset, I must first thank the Honorable Chief Justice for allowing us to use this iconic room number 46 for the special Women's Day. I would also like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our panelists, Honorable Justice Dangre, Dr. Ashwini Joshi, Dr. Nandita Shah, Dr. Janvi Kedare, and Ms. Tamanna Inamdar, who have all taken out time from their schedules and given us their insights and experiences, enriching us all with their wisdom. Your words have inspired us and added tremendous depth to our today's discussion. We are deeply honored by honorable judges, Justice Manjusha Deshpande and Justice Aarti Sathe, who had to leave due to their work. They have also given their time, and I am grateful to that. We sincerely thank Mr. Dhanaji Zadhav and Mr. Prabhakar Zadhav, our Honorable Rajastars, for their constant cooperation and administrative support for this event possible for room number 46. Our appreciation also extends to the dedicated staff and High Court officers whose quite efficient support has helped us to have this smooth function. Finally, I thank all the distinguished members and guests present here who have taken out time from their after hours to be present here for the function. May we continue to celebrate Women's Day forever and lead the industry, as ma'am said, that after 25 years, it is always going to be the woman at the top. Thank you all so much. May I all request now to stand up for the national anthem.
तव शुभ नामे जागे, तव शुभ आशीष मांगे, गाहे तव जय गाथा, जन गण मंगलदायक।
now request everybody to join us for tea and refreshments in the passage.